Walter,
Hey, how are
or shall I
you?
say Dr. Stamp.
Yeah, yes.
How are you?
I'm good. I am glad it's almost Friday.
Yes, 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 yes. It's really nice to have the weekend approaching. With that in mind, I do appreciate you taking some time today to speak with us about, who you are and your practice here at IME. Um, so we'll go ahead and just jump right into it. So first things first, what drew you to become a therapist and what keeps you really passionate about this work?
Yeah, so I always view that as a very easy question, but also very complicated one.
Uh-huh.
Um, Honestly, I've always been super fascinated by the way that people think, behave, why they do what they do, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I think that's what generally drew me to the science of psychology, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think kind of through that, I think understanding the transformational power that is therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and I just absolutely love it. I love being able to connect with a person. I love being able to use a lot of the training that I've gone through for the past, goodness, how long has it been?
Too long.
Too long. Let me say that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um to really make a significant difference in someone's life from really an individual or a small group base,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And human beings, people just fascinate me with how they understand themselves, how they understand their environment. And I think being able to work with that in real time
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is something that I feel like I'm called to do.
Nice. So I hear calling, I hear transformation, and I hear um what's the other word you said? Calling, transformation, and fascination, right? So something that you are naturally fascinated about leads to a transformation in someone else's life, which I think is
Yeah.
really fascinating, for lack of a better word, right? So with that idea of transformation, because all therapy, would you agree that all therapy is transformative?
I think all therapy has the possibility of being transformative.
Okay. So how does your calling married with your fascination lead to transformation in the lives of others?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, well, weird pivot, but I think because I take my work very seriously,
Mm-hmm.
I don't 100% take myself super seriously.
Okay.
And for me, that's important because I think to deliver a modality, right? Deliver a theory, deliver something like that in a service oriented space, I think takes a certain level of levity with yourself
Mm-hmm.
so that you are able to still connect with a person on a human being level.
Mm.
And so for me, I take the work very seriously. Like
Mm-hmm.
what I do, I take very seriously. But I also understand how I show up as a human being, my
Mm-hmm.
personality, my propensity to sometimes use humor as a defense, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
That is also another major part of the tool in delivering that modality.
So it's the professional use of self that you're talking about, right? So you have
100%.
you are, and as therapists, it is the relationship that you have with yourself is a very important relationship to have, especially
100%.
when you are utilizing yourself as the tool to
Yes.
help facilitate a change in someone else's life. You have to be very aware of who you are and how you show up.
Yeah.
And then because we use ourselves, we don't necessarily have the luxury of hiding,
Hmm.
even if we think we're hiding,
Yeah.
in the encounter. And so we have to be very clear about how we are going to use aspects of ourselves in a professional capacity, which may in that particular professional capacity, because even if I speak for myself as a business owner, I have several different professional capacities that I have to figure out how to use myself with them that don't necessarily translate across the board in all of the professional domains and or personal domains. So yeah, I think that is a very important point that you're making, this concept of professional use of self and also self-awareness in facilitating or creating an opportunity for transformation in the life of someone else. Because as we know, just because the opportunity is there, it doesn't mean that it will be realized or fulfilled.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I think that's super important. And to me, that speaks to a certain level, at least for me personally, a certain level of integration that's required when doing this work.
Yeah.
Not to say that how I show up in the therapy space is not going to be 100% exactly how I show up in my personal life or with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a strong through line. And I think that is what's important.
Yeah. Yes. Awesome. I when I train a lot of therapists, that is a lot of the work we have to do in the beginning, because they're like, I want to be a good therapist. And they're turning into a textbook, and it's like, no, you're human first. Like, how do you be a human being in a relationship with a person with boundaries, of course, but this textbook thing, you are not going to be able to really service the clients, especially the clients that we're interested in working in the IME, which is like the strong friend and, working predominantly in Black communities and expanded to some communities of color. So can you tell me your approach to therapy and working with the clients that you service here at IME, which are, the strong friend, you work in the queer community, and you also work specifically in substance use spaces as well, in addition to. So tell me about your approaches.
Yeah. So I'll start off by saying I'm very psychodynamic. And I know when a lot of people hear that, they think of like blank slate. They think of a clinician, a therapist who doesn't emote, doesn't express anything, doesn't do any of those things, right? Luckily for me, I trained in psychodynamic therapy in a very Black setting. Mm-hmm. For me, that means a necessity in relating to the client, kind of a little bit what I was saying earlier. So I say all that to say that my approach is really kind of rooted in really kind of understanding how the client is functioning now, and really kind of tying so much back to how that kind of came into being, right? Mm-hmm. So when I think about it, it's like a client does not come to therapy with a bunch of problems. They actually come to therapy with a bunch of solutions. The ways in which they have understood their environment, understood their reality, and have learned to cope with those things, and which is their solution to whatever those problems are. Mm-hmm. And so when I think about my approach, it is very collaborative with the client and really kind of piecing apart, okay, so this is a solution to this specific problem. How has that been working for you? Mm. And let's really kind of take a step back and figure out what has worked and what doesn't, or what worked for you as a child to cope with a specific thing. You're still using that in your present day as a grown-ass adult, and is that still working for you? Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So that is a piece of my approach. Another piece of it is extremely relational. If I always tell clients, like, I could pop on screen, you could pop on screen, and I could remind you of someone. I could elicit something from you transferentially, or you could pull something from me counter-transferentially, right? And it's going to be extremely important in our work to be very transparent about that. Mm-hmm. Because how you and I interact is going to serve as a microcosm for how you are functioning in the real world. Mm-hmm. And so it's actually the perfect it's actually the perfect storm, because how you and I are interacting right now, we can work through the kinks, we can work through whatever's going on. And it is my hope that I have created or fostered a safe, secure environment.
Mm-hmm.
Or they like create a safe, secure environment for you to freely bump back and forth and do whatever you need to in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is very scary, right? Because for the client, sometimes you're seen and held in ways, and especially when, you know, in our day-to-day life, we are required to compartmentalize and only show certain aspects of ourselves, you know, and so when we are accustomed to masking, and if we slip into an aspect of ourselves that doesn't fit the framework of what the environment wants us to project, then we are discarded oftentimes. And so that doesn't necessarily happen in the therapy session, which, you know, you can work out the kinks. You could show all versions of yourself so that now you can see it, you know, with the therapist, and then you can work out what you want to keep, you know, in terms of aspects of yourself and what you'd like to evolve.
Absolutely.
So I think that is really cool. Is this different than psychodynamic frameworks? What's my question? Is it different than, you said that you've learned your theoretical based psychodynamically trained in in Black communities and very Black spaces?
Yeah. Do
you feel that what you've learned deviates from the traditional psychodynamic approach?
Yes. Especially like traditionally, psychodynamic approaches really foster an environment that there's very little connection with the therapist.
Okay.
The therapist may be seen as kind of like an object, but like a disembodied object for which the client is to project everything onto and then process as a result of that.
Mm-hmm. And say that in layman's terms for the people who aren't clinicians.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was like, yes. The therapist is used as a tool and not as a human being.
Sure.
Right. Sure. Which I mean, many could say that's what happens in most therapies, right? But that tool for which the client is to kind of put all their stuff on and then examine and process it that way, that is an approach, but I don't know that is an appropriate approach for communities of color or communities that hold a number of minoritized identities.
Yeah, and communities that are very communal, right? Like we talk a lot, I see in the social media where like vibe checks, you know, I want to make sure that I feel comfortable with you before I tell you anything.
Yeah.
And so for non-individualistic communities, right? It is the relational piece is just as important as being an object for one's projection and then examination.
Yeah. And especially if we're thinking about it in the sense of how community can foster healing, how that's supposed to be facilitated in a therapeutic space if the therapist isn't actually engaging with you relationally.
Sure. You said something earlier too that I wanted to go back to around you may be coming to therapy because you are finding solutions, right? Like you've had solutions. So what do you say to people that are apprehensive about therapy, saying like, I don't need to go to therapy for somebody to tell me what's wrong with me, right? Or I already know what's wrong with me and what's going on with me. I don't need therapy. What would you say to that particular person?
Yeah, I understand. So I always like to compare it to more of medical field, which may be good, may be bad, but knowing what is wrong with you and then having the tools to help grow and through what is wrong with you, quote unquote, are two drastically different things. I know I'm having headaches every single day. I'm fully aware of that. But I don't know what may be the precipitating cause to that.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And so And so when people do say that, or let's say a client comes into the therapeutic space and is like, and is kind of maybe having that approach to it, then I always get really curious as to, well, what have you been doing that has been working? And I don't mean that in a shady, like, well, what's been working for you since? No.
Yes.
But honestly, out of curiosity, like, what has been working, what has not been working? And if things have not been working out for you with you knowing what's wrong with you, then what is actually the hesitance in starting therapy? What's the underlying piece for why you actually don't want to do therapy?
Sure. And even I find in my work, shifting this right-wrong dichotomy, right? Like maybe nothing is wrong with you.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you're trying to achieve something in an ineffective way, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't inherently make you wrong, or something is wrong with you, right? Because we know that black and white thinking can really be a deterrent to growth, because it's either right or it's wrong. You know, it's good or it's bad. And so we try to find the gray in that.
Yeah, and that's why I don't like to label good, bad, right, wrong. What's been healthy, what's been unhealthy for you?
Yes, yeah, I do the same thing. Healthy, unhealthy, effective, ineffective towards the goal. What are you trying to achieve, and does this work in a sustainable way? Right. I find that to really help folks who may be apprehensive about coming into therapy, or maybe is very excited about coming to therapy, but maybe even subconsciously using the therapeutic encounter as the overbearing parent, right? To tell you, to scold you, you know? So cool. Something you said to me, not on this call, in this interview, but a while ago, that I think we should bring into this conversation is your emphasis on queer mental health. Yes, specifically Black queer mental health. And you made a very important distinction at this time when we were having this other conversation. You said that a queer therapist doesn't necessarily practice queer mental health, like specialize in queer mental health, meaning that just because a person identifies as something does not mean that because they have a certain lived experience, it doesn't mean that they have a specialty in that particular area of practice. Can you talk more about the distinctions between the two and how your practice centers the needs of the Black queer population?
Yeah, and so for me, I have a passion when addressing identities. And so, and when I think about identities, it's how you are showing up, your comfort level in showing up, and what that actually means to your integration as a whole human being. Right. And so, because that is my approach, I think it's important that the identity that I hold as a therapist are identities that are addressed in the therapeutic space.
Okay.
Once again, because I'm trying not to use too many like psychological terms here, but I think it's important for when working with clients to serve to some extent as a mirroring object to allow an understanding of what I am going through as a client, what I am going through, what I am experiencing is being reflected back to me by someone who holds similar identities to myself.
Now, layman's terms.
Right.
You're doing, I see you trying.
I know, I'm trying so hard.
And this is great, right? And this really speaks to the need to make this accessible, right? Yeah. So we know that as clinicians, we have a whole lot of words and concepts and frameworks. And a lot of times when we get in a therapeutic encounter, we have to translate that into layman's terms, so that our clients aren't just smiling and nodding, as if they have, PhDs in psychology, right? So if you were to explain this to a client or potential client to say, hey, there's, you know, therapists that are queer and they practice mental health, and then this space of queer mental health, specifically Black queer mental health, is a specialty. How would you explain it? How would you explain it to a potential client or a client that is curious about this?
Okay, so thank you. Uh, so I would look at it. I would explain to a client that think about all the identities that you hold.
Mm-hmm.
The identities that you hold, every single one, your race, gender, sexual orientation identity, religion, military status, whether or not you're in a relationship, all these things
Mm-hmm.
all come together to form a very specific, unique identity for yourself.
Sure.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we are examining is that for you, some of those identities, especially if we're thinking about the identities that I specialize in. So let's say in this example, your Blackness and your queerness. Those, if we're just looking at those two identities, those together represent a different identity, a different set of lived experiences that you are going to have from someone who just has a queer identity,
Mm-hmm.
a different racial identity,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so examining that and having respect and knowledge of that as a therapist and approaching that in a way that will hopefully help you feel seen through all those identities, it's something that's extremely important to me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. As opposed to becoming too familiar. I see this in Black spaces. You know, my specialty is culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Across the Black diaspora, I love the nuances of culture and how they show up in therapy, which is why I work in a global capacity.
Yeah.
And I know specifically with Black Americans, sometimes in the context of the United States, we like to own the race of Black, right?
Yeah.
And so Black becomes synonymous with Black American, but there are Black people across the diaspora that have different, but racially, you know, homogenous, right? But ethnic and cultural heterogeneity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I saying that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, cool. And so, so what we can do sometimes, as I look at what's happening in Black mental health spaces, there is this emphasis on the Black community as opposed to Black communities.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And what happens is that we start to say things like, oh, people who look like me, and people who, you know, we have these shared identities, right? And then we start to make assumptions about who the person is based off of this one aspect of a shared identity, which is race. And we can cause a lot of harm that way when we are not really looking at the intersectionality of the human and what their experience is in this context, which also may vary as they move in other contexts. So what I hear you saying in terms of the level of attentiveness you have in the work that you do, specializing in Black queer mental health, it is different from someone who is but someone who is queer and practicing mental health, because that person may say, well, I'm queer, you're queer, so, you know, I'm qualified to be able to help you, right? But what they may be doing is, in layman's terms, becoming too familiar and not being curious enough about a said person experience and really making that therapy session or that encounter about themselves as a therapist
100.
And making assumptions about what someone else's experience is, what we do, right? Like, you know, Black people, we do this. And it's like, well, maybe we don't.
Right.
That, you know, but having the forethought around that before you jump out there and project something onto your client that is not theirs to hold, and also assuming that your experience as what mine would be a Black woman is the experience as a Black woman, which does not appreciate the variation, especially when we are looking across cultures.
100%. Yeah, and I think that can be dangerous because it makes the assumption, like you said, that your experience, your intersectionality is a template for which others should fall in line by.
Yeah, and it inadvertently removes the relationship.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And the curiosity and the process of understanding your client, and it's really making the sessions about you, and you find that you are, like you said, you've become the gold standard, and now you're teaching your client how to be like you, which is not really what anybody should be paying for, you know, in therapy.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. So it's your time here at IME, you're one of the many clinicians here. And as you know, we hold several values, right? Several meaning 3. So I want to get a sense from you, either how you embody these values and what they mean to you as a clinician here working at IME. Yes? Yeah. So the first is resilience, right? So really, there's a lot of talk about resilience. There's a lot of literature about resilience. And I also think the concept of resilience has been perverted and overused, especially in communities of color, specifically in Black communities. And typically when it's spoken about, it is either ignoring the pain and the pressure that one feels and has to be resilient against, or it is saying just continue to be resilient.
Yeah.
We're not. So we acknowledge resilience without ignoring pain. That is how we express a value here. So we acknowledge both the strength and the vulnerability, understanding that true resilience is not only enduring, but actively addresses and works to alleviate sources of pain, right? Yeah. So what does that mean to you, this concept of the value of resilience in your work here at IME?
Yeah, so the best way that I think about it is kind of what I said earlier about the client coming to the therapeutic space not with problems but with solutions. Mm-hmm. Right? And so yes, I agree. Resilience has been overused. And I think it's almost turned into a shackle with which to categorize people in a way that ignores the actual hurt and pain that they've been through and the work that's necessary to heal that pain.
Sure.
Right. So for me in my clinical work, it really does come down to kind of figuring out like, okay, what have you been doing? How have you been surviving? How have you been kind of getting through this? How have you been working through whatever this is? And has that been healthy for you? Has that been impactful? Mm-hmm. And I think that is what's necessary to kind of really interject a little bit of the vulnerability and the risk, because I view vulnerability as risk.
Mm-hmm. It is for sure, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's really like communicating with the client, like, okay, so you've been doing this to cope with this. It has not really been working the way in which you needed to. What would it look like to take the risk and try this? Mm-hmm. Or processing why we're coping with whatever this is in this specific way. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost for me kind of taking it from like the surface level of like, I'm coping with this via this to be and it's, allow me to be a resilient person. Mm-hmm. Okay, but let's be curious about why that is.
Yes.
And really kind of surgically opening it up and mm-hmm. really kind of diving in and actually really fully understanding, bringing a strong sense of awareness as to why we are behaving in the way that we are. Mm-hmm. And then examining like, okay, so how do we leverage our understanding of this now to make significant change for who we are as a person?
Yes. And you didn't say this. I'm going to add to this, and I know that you will agree because we've spoken about this offline before.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's also working to decentralize the issue, right?
Yes.
And sit with the client and say, this is a messed up system, right? Or
Yes.
this,
Yeah.
there's nothing that you are doing, right? We can do all of the internal work, right? But we have to decentralize this issue. This is not a you issue. This is a systems level issue. This is a societal level issue that you have internalized, and you're trying to find a way to cope with it through changing yourself. But really, we can adapt, but let's be clear about where the dysfunction is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know you didn't say that in that moment, but I knew that you'd agree,
Yeah, because like if it's not a you problem that you are experiencing anxiety at work because you have racist supervisors.
Yes.
That's not a you thing. The
Yeah.
anxiety is your body telling you this is a problem.
Yes. Yeah.
And so let's take a bit of a pivot because we have to understand we are people of color. We are minoritized identities living in a white-centered capitalistic world.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to experience society in a way that because we are not meant to thrive in this environment.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. And I think our work at IME centers that this is the safe and brave place to really work from both angles, right? There's this social justice. This is how we infuse social justice into the work, right? Like really, we don't want folks walking around feeling like it's a them issue when it's not.
No.
And just saying, well, we'll try to change this, and you're so resilient, as opposed to really naming where the dysfunction is.
Yeah.
So next is lived experiences. That's another value. So we recognize and honor the lived experiences of our clients as valid evidence and scholarship. We really value the unique perspectives that they bring and the knowledge that they bring to the therapy journey. So what does that mean to you, and how do you embody it in your work?
Yeah. And so this makes me think of another piece that we spoke about earlier, like the intersectionality piece.
Mm-hmm.
And really kind of honoring the extremely unique and nuanced person that you are due to the identity that you hold, due to the experiences that you had
Mm-hmm.
that have shaped who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think having an understanding of culture, but also an openness to understanding someone's own unique perspective of their culture and who they are is going to be extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
I think about, like, since I do a lot of like identity development work, for me there has to be an understanding and almost like a humbling of myself that I could be speaking to someone who may hold a queer identity and maybe talk about situations in which they are experiencing discrimination, but they themselves may not be aware of it, depending upon where they fall in the development of their own identity.
Sure.
I cannot then put on them, well, you need to do this, and that, and how dare they, and da 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 da. Because that's not helpful. Because now I'm telling you what to do.
Exactly.
But I think it's taking the lived experience of that client and really, once again, collaboratively working together to understand and grow and to have a deeper understanding of what is actually going on and why this is causing you the amount of pain that is causing you.
Yeah. You speak to a really important thing that we do as clinicians that many people may not know, is pacing, right?
Yes.
We may know a lot of things, and we may have a lot of insight into what may be going on from a micro or macro perspective, and how that's being internalized in the individual. But unless that individual is there, right, you can't just vomit your understanding of what's happening onto them prior to readiness. So pacing and readiness is quite important. And words in our value statement is valid evidence and scholarship, because that is where we are really in community with the person. And we're not saying, because I have this education and I know this and I wrote this article and I did this is the scholarship that has come out of the ivory tower or the university lens, and this is what articles are saying. We really have to be in relationship with the person, to your point earlier, and value what they're bringing as the scholarship and evidence for what is happening in their world at that time. And then at that point, the work truly becomes collaborative, as opposed to one directional, and you are being prescriptive in a way that is unhealthy for the client's autonomy and in the therapeutic encounter.
Yeah, and it can even serve as a way of doing more damage, because it could be replicating a lot of the toxic relationship structures that they live in their daily life.
Yeah. And then you also need enough, because you still honor yourself as a therapist. So even when you do that and the client is giving you the feedback through whatever resistance patterning they have, we have to be introspective or utilize our supervision to be able to understand, oh, I am doing this. And relation means that we then come back to the client and apologize, and then we work on repair. To prove your point earlier around, this is a actual relationship, know what I mean?
Yeah.
In that way, with boundaries, etc. I've seen some things on the internet about levels of self-disclosure that is wild, but
ridiculous.
Let's stay focused on the values. Yes.
Right.
So
I can talk about self-disclosure for hours.
So therapy as self-love and advocacy. So we view therapy as an act of self-love, self-care, and advocacy. So emphasizing really the historical tendency for sacrificial love in Black communities and other minoritized communities. We stress the importance of prioritizing personal well-being and fostering a culture where therapy becomes an act of self-love and advocacy for collective progress, right? So how do you internalize that value in your work?
Yeah, the first thing that always comes up for me when I read this value and even thinking about it is what does agency look like for you?
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm thinking about agency in this context, I'm thinking about, how are we loving on ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
That is what we can control.
Mm-hmm.
What are we actively doing to address what we know are some of the things that may be causing us harm?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I think that knowing that and understanding that is probably one of the best things that you can do for yourself,
mm-hmm.
especially as with what the hope is, the work to really kind of unfold a lot of those like quiet internalized messages that we have
mm-hmm.
growing up about how I may not be able to, or I'm not supposed to show up emotionally because it's going to make someone else feel bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or even though you hurt me, I can't express that because you will have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's why I keep going back to the relationship piece, because the therapist-client relationship, to me, facilitates an environment in which those intrapsychic structures are repaired. Layman's terms, it does. Those inner structures, those inner wounds are repaired. That allows you to go back into some of these environments or even new environments and have those boundaries, have the knowledge of yourself to understand how you operate in this space and what needs to be adjusted, pivoted, etc.
Sure. Yeah. And I love that. Especially, seeing the process is amazing, right? When the client really begins to understand that taking care of myself is also taking care of my community,
Yeah.
right? You start to see yourself as part of the community as opposed to one that is shouldering all the burdens of the community. Because when you do go and you begin to set those boundaries, it also gives permission for this other person to examine parts of themselves that they may have not had to do because you would hold it all for them.
Yes.
Right. And
Yeah.
so we start to think about, the word I wanted to use earlier was collectivistic cultures as opposed to communal cultures.
Okay.
So you in collectivistic cultures, you start to see the value of like shared work and shared burden as opposed to one person upholding the whole unit.
Yeah.
Right. And then that person passes on or becomes sick or whichever. And now folks don't have agency. They don't have a sense of how to be stable, right? Because this person was the everything, right? And you really don't ensure the continuation of your culture in a healthy and sustainable way, because you have, this is the strong friend, right? You have, in your love for your community or your family or whomever, you have interrupted learning opportunities for them that will be needed for them to examine their intrapsychic structures in a way that will help them to also carry themselves and also carry the collective. So that is nice. Like a better way to put it. We're wrapping up, so I'm wondering, as we close out, do you have anything that you would want to make sure that anybody that is thinking about working with you, make sure, what is something that you would want them to know? And for anybody that is working with you or thinking about working with you, what is something that you want them to know?
Oh goodness. I don't know. I don't know that I can blanketly say that, right? Because I think that, or blanketly answer that. I think because, like, kind of going back to that relational piece, every person that I see is going to experience me differently. And so I think, I guess, knowing that, like, my purpose here in this space is to create a structure and an environment for you to grow and explore.
Okay.
And I think that's something that's extremely important, because it's important for me as a clinician to create a safe and secure environment.
Sure.
A place of non-judgment, a place where you don't have to mask how you are going to show up, because how you show up authentically is going to be imperative to your growth and to your health as a human being.
And if you are masking, you will bring it to their attention.
Oh goodness, yes.
To explore. Yeah, and I as we close out, I think it's important. I think in the therapeutic encounters, from what I can see, not mine, but just what I hear in the industry more so, that transformational therapy is quite different than just supportive therapy, right? Which they both have their space in the therapeutic world. And with transformational therapy, you do get support, but you also are challenged, right? You're also are seen. Even in the relationship, you may be showing up as the cheerleader, you may be showing up as the reflective space, you may be showing up as the name some other ways that we show up as
a sitting listener.
Yeah, as the listener.
Yeah.
As a place that's holding space for the person for their processing, right? As a container.
Yeah.
But no matter how you are showing up, your interest at all times is for the safety and security of that particular client, even if they may not feel that in the moment, right?
Yeah.
I think that's important to say. And even if, it is showing itself, it's revealing itself that the therapeutic relationship may no longer be the safe and supportive space, right? The level of authenticity to be able to have that conversation as well. So what people will get with you is authenticity and an actual relationship with the therapist that is designed to be supportive before, during, and after the encounter.
Yeah. Way
Yeah.
better to put it, but yes.
So thank you so much for your time, Walter.
First, absolutely.
If folks want to contact us, there'll be information in the bio or the description box. If they want to work with you, I know that your calendar, you have some availability currently, depending on when they see this video. So
Yeah, right.
thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good day.
Bye.
Stop recording.